Do you crave better self-esteem and confidence, but struggle to silence your anxiety, fears, and insecurities? If so, welcome to the sisterhood of fellow travelers on the path to reclaiming their self-confidence and happiness. I'm Jennifer DeBellis, award-winning author, speaker, and assault survivor. I spent the past few decades helping young women like you overcome fear, self-doubt, and trauma to reclaim their joy and self-worth. I cannot wait to share the secrets I learned on my own healing journey and help you restore your inner warrior as I show you the skills and tools you need to save your own broken world. If you're ready to empower your inner warrior to overcome fear, doubt, and anxiety, turn off those distractions and tune in to this episode. Today I want to talk to you more about Exodus and our departure from an old way of life and thinking. Like I mentioned last episode, I've lost a lot of time wandering around aimlessly in my own wilderness before I figured out I need to just step into the promised land where I learned how to live to my fullest. If you no longer want to remain a slave to your fears, doubts, unresolved trauma, and the anxiety that these cause, this episode and mini-series is for you. In today's episode, we'll continue to explore what it means to experience an exodus in our personal lives. We'll talk more about the biblical exodus and how it connects to our own journey to freedom. And we'll unpack some additional strategies to stop wandering around aimlessly in the wilderness of our darkest hours and exodus. Last episode, we talked about the biblical record of the Israelites' exodus that lasted 40 years. When I ended this episode, I left you with some homework. I asked you to consider if you wanted to remain a slave to your fears, doubts, anxieties, and old trauma, or if you were ready to put in the work to stop wandering around aimlessly in the wilderness of your darkest hours. If you tuned into my previous series on wilderness mentality, you'll recall me talking about the importance of learning to navigate our internal and external spaces. That there's a time to be still, a time to plan, a time to clear that path, and a time to move. During the wilderness series, my thoughts kept returning to this word exodus. Exodus is a Greek word. The prefix ex stands for out of. And hodos, H-O-D-O-S, means path, road, or a way. So I'd like to explore this pathway or road concept that leads us out of a current place or situation and into a place or situation that we have been hoping for, that we need, that is part of that goal, that end game that we, have talked about in other episodes. So when you hear scholars and even preachers talk about the biblical story of Exodus, it's usually centered on how the Israelites wandered the desert for 40 years, encamping just beyond the promised land, like just on the outskirts of the promised land, this place that was their promised and destined homeland. It was their inheritance, this land that, according to the stories, was filled with milk and honey and all of the blessings that these slaves, remember they were slaves being freed out of Egypt and trying to start their life in freedom. And they spent 40 years just wandering and setting up camp and moving and setting up camp right outside of this promised land. So there are several things that scholars and preachers can't agree on when it comes to the reasoning behind this wandering. But one of the things that they can agree on is that these individuals who were once enslaved people couldn't get their thinking right and their lifestyle in order to enter the promised land. So they lacked faith and instead put their trust in these spies and these scouts that they sent out into the promised land to kind of be like, okay, you go scout it out. Like, check it out. Tell us, like, what are these people like? And what is the land like? And, what are we up against? And these individuals came back and they had all of these terror-filled negative accounts. They're giants. It's going to be impossible. We can't do it. And out of the 12 individuals who were sent to spy and scope it out, 10 of them were saying, all these negative things. And so the interesting thing here is that these Israelites refused to believe in their God's promise despite their firsthand experiences with everything he had fulfilled so far to bring them out of Egypt and into this place. You have to think about all the different things that we talked about, a few of them in the last episode. But I mean, just imagine this like Red Sea, this big body of water opening up so that the people can pass through, and however you want to interpret that, as being like that's literally, realistically what happened, or skeptics who are like, well, maybe there was a drought, there was, whatever. But there are literally records of the Israelites passing through safely, and then those who were on their tail, the Egyptians who were trying to come and, having second thoughts like, oh, why did we free them? They ended up being swept up into these waters, and they were, drowning. They were unsuccessful with that quest. And so however you want to look at that, these individuals saw that, then they're living in the wilderness and they're seeing all of these provisions being provided for them. They're, again, they're experiencing different things. I don't want to lose myself in that rabbit trail right now, but they're experiencing all of these different promises, even the manna coming from the sky. The provisions of food are even literally just landing, just airdropping like in the Hunger Games, just airdropping right into their life. And they still doubt. And that doubt kind of leads them to be rebellious and not do some of the other stuff that they needed to do to, again, get their thinking and their lifestyle ready to move into this new life. So they accepted this voice of those 10 who were negative, fear-filled, sharing these, terror stories. They were faithless people. They allowed that to sway their thinking, despite what they've already experienced firsthand and what they already knew to be the promises that were given to them. You have to remember, they were slaves who were finally freed only to wander in the wilderness for 40 years. That's 2 life sentences in prison. Not 1, 2. 2 20-year life sentences as if they were prisoners in jail. 40 days is a season. 40 years is a lifestyle choice. They ultimately accepted this double punishment when they stayed stuck in that wilderness, and they just continued to wander around and live in fear and doubt when everything that they wanted and everything that they needed was on the other side of that wilderness. And isn't that the way of the current world and the way that we often find ourselves living out life? There's so much focus on the negative outcomes and the impossibilities that lead all of the masses, most of us included, to lose hope in our own abilities and to forget the positive outcomes we've already experienced. We stay stuck where we don't want to be or no longer should be because we're afraid that everything won't go exactly as we hope that it will go, or we're afraid that things will not be or look the way that we anticipated them to be. We let the terrified views and doubts of others derail us even after we or maybe someone who came before us already set up the tracks. So all you have to do is get in the cart that's heading down the track, and we allow these individuals to not only get us off the train, to completely derail the entire train that's already on the track, headed to that destination. We not only stop chasing our dreams and those goals that we set, we stop setting goals altogether. We stop trying new things altogether, and we forget what we're capable of doing. Let that sink in for just a second. We forget what we're capable of. Like, that is one of the saddest tragedies that I watch people that I really, really care about, or even people in the larger world where I'm rooting for them. You have people who you're watching their journeys. Maybe they're public figures, or maybe, they're just people on your social media where you're just watching their journey and you're just rooting for them. And then you see them get derailed by these things. You see them operating in fear or allowing somebody to say something negative or discouraging to them, and then they take it to heart. And then they start to adapt their life and their actions around that. And I was recently having this very conversation in a different capacity with someone about seeing psychics. Now, in my faith, I don't I don't see psychics because I believe that they're interacting with common spirits, and that's kind of like, playing for the other team. So I don't want to spend time with common spirits, and like, I just don't believe that I'm actually engaging with the people who they say I'm engaging with. So while I do think that these individuals are certainly engaging with people in another realm, I don't necessarily believe that they're the people who they are representing. So that's what a common spirit is. It's just somebody who, not somebody, is a spiritual force that was around for a while, who knows those people just as intimately, so who can give you all those different intimate details. But more importantly, when the individual said, hey, I'm having my friend who's a psychic come over, she's going to do some readings. I know you're not into that thing because, it's blah, blah, blah. She said a whole bunch of stuff. And then it dawned on me, she doesn't really understand my deeper reasoning behind not wanting to have a reading done. So I am an individual who has the gift of discernment. I do have visions, and sometimes I know exactly how something might play out that's in the very near future. Sometimes I don't know what to do with that information. Was that was it a vision? Was it a dream? What was it? And I just have to wait that out. And that has become regular life for me. But as somebody who has these gifts, I have no need or interest in allowing someone else to look into and then interpret my past, my current life, and certainly my future. A psychic is still a person with their own biases, outlooks, and their hierarchy of priorities. So what they may see as positive or negative might not even be significant to me. It might be something that I might see in a completely different way because of my own perspective. So it's not that I don't welcome people's insights into my life, but I would more realistically seek out advice or insights or discernment from somebody who I already trust and know very well, and they know me very intimately. So that if they are getting some type of insights or they have some type of discernment that they believe came from their own brain or that they believe is coming from this higher power, that they're invested in me already, that those insights or that discernment will align with what they already know about me. So it's not to say that I don't welcome anything that anybody says, but I'm certainly not seeking out, people I don't know who are not familiar with me to get this information. And this leads into other areas of my thinking, which one of the big things is I want to think for myself. So I don't need somebody to collect information or, to have these insights, have this discernment, and then come and tell me, oh, you should proceed this way, or you should avoid this person or get this person out of your life, and all those different things that may come out of that engagement, because I don't want to ever allow someone to just do all that thinking for me, which is really an easy trap to fall into. We are all susceptible to fall into that trap of just tell me. Just tell me what the future looks like, and just tell me what path to go on, and just tell me what to do. And life doesn't work that way. It doesn't come with that kind of manual, and someone could give you all of those things and be completely off because, again, their biases, what they're seeing and how they're interpreting that stuff is not necessarily exactly what you would find the most beneficial route or the most beneficial decisions. So if you're not aware, I teach higher ed, different writing and communications and English classes. And one of the things that I spend a lot of time trying to dismantle and then rebuild in my students' practices is thinking for themselves. Is collecting everything and taking everything under advisement, is knowing how and when to fact check, where to get sound information, and then to bring that all together and then make your own judgments. You have a brain, and you can continue throughout your life to strength train that brain and that thinking to then where you're never allowing someone to make those decisions for you. You're never allowing someone to do all the thinking, tell me what I need to know, what do I need to focus on, and tell me what path to take. That you just get to a point where you realize that you are the most qualified person to make those decisions for yourself. So let's take a hypothetical here. Say you are in an Exodus season and you're moving. Moving is hard. Moving is a lot of work. Change is hard. But the benefits are we don't want to stay where we're not supposed to be anymore, or we don't want to be anymore, or that maybe we've outgrown that, or it's no longer safe, or it's no longer filling the purpose or filling the needs that we have in this season, in this time of our life. So we say, I have to make a change. I have to move. And the benefits far outweigh the negatives. Of course, there are going to be things that we cannot carry into this new space. There will be things that die or die off on our way to this new space. Old ways of thinking, old ways of doing things, old ways of maybe carrying ourselves, old goals, just etc., etc. Fill it in. How will we know if something is even right for us, though, if we don't even check it out for ourselves? And that's the part right there. If we never take the first step into just trying it, we will never even know what we're missing. We won't know either if that isn't the right thing for us. Just think about all the times in your life where you didn't move, where you thought you wanted something, you had a desire or a goal, and you were just right outside of it. And for whatever reason, fear, doubts, disbelief, maybe old trauma that made you believe you just weren't ready, or you just weren't, worthy of it, whatever, fill in the blank. You don't do it for a long stretched out amount of time. And then eventually, somehow, maybe, I don't know, the Wizard of Oz, the tornado picks you up and transports you and just throws you into the new land. And now you're like, wow, I didn't even have to step in here. I just landed here. And then you come out the front door of the house and you realize, oh my God, this isn't where I wanted to be at all. Now, how much time did you waste preparing for this place that now you realize wasn't even where you wanted to be? How much stuff did you go to TJ Maxx and Marshall's and Kohl's and to keep putting boxes of stuff together, this is what's going to be in my new space when I get there, and you just keep planning and planning and planning these layers of life, and then you get there and you realize this isn't the life at all that you wanted. And that's a risk we've run also, because maybe we just waited too long to enter that particular space in that particular season, and now that season is past and we're off season. Just like some of this weather we're having here in Michigan. It's a little off season. So it feels very disjarring. For those of us who love summer, it's awesome. For all of you who've been waiting for fall, you're like, come on already, give us fall. But sometimes it can feel like that, where the seasons are just off a little bit and you're not prepared. Or you think, oh my gosh, this would have been so much better 10 years ago, right? Half of a life sentence 10 years ago. But now I'm a different person. And you stayed where you weren't supposed to be for 10 years, while you were supposed to be here for 10 years in the next place, in that promised land of the time. You stayed in your exodus. You stayed on the path like a nomad. And now you're entering into a new season, and that space is no longer the thing that's going to satisfy, fulfill, gonna draw out your purpose, because there's probably another place now that you are supposed to be prepared to enter or ready to enter, and it isn't even on your radar. You haven't even thought about it because you were so focused and distracted by waiting to do this thing. So sometimes we do that to ourselves also. Something else that I talk about with my students that I'm going to relate to this conversation about not taking risks and holding ourselves back is this idea that we have so many opportunities in life that we have high risk, low stakes. So there's not a lot that we lose if things don't go according to plan. We gain also in every instance an opportunity to learn and grow from situations. Those continue to shape us. They continue to show us the person that we want to become, or maybe that we don't want to become. So every one of these things is a learning process with a learning curve. That's life. Whether we stay as a nomad right outside of these spaces in the promised land that we know is destined to be ours, when we boldly and bravely enter it, one thing is true, which is There's always going to be failure. There's always going to be things that don't go exactly as we thought they would go. There will be setbacks. That's life. These are all things that are life. So whether we try to play it safe or we are afraid to, move into those different spaces, the things are still going to happen. We don't live in a vacuum. You have to eventually leave your house. You have to eventually deal with people. You have to eventually do things that instantly put you in a situation where everything isn't always going to go the way that you want it to go. Everything isn't always going to be a positive experience. There will be plenty of positive experiences with some negative attached to it. There will be plenty of negative experiences with positive attached to it. That is the cycle of living, not just the cycle of life. So the thing I really want to leave you with today is this. Stop waiting for the perfect timing for every single detail to be just right, just so, before you make the first move. We're not supposed to remain those nomads like those Israelites who simply moved from one imprisonment to another. That's right. They were still in a form of prison, living out in that Exodus space, living in the path. The path isn't supposed to be a place that you set up camp. The path is supposed to be, again, this opening, this way to something else. Not to be, just think about that. If you have a path or a road, if you set up your living space in that path, it's no longer a throughway. It's no longer a path, a road, a place that leads from one to the other. It's the end destination. That's not supposed to be our end destination. That's a form of prison. So we end up becoming a slave to the camps that we set up in our refusal to keep our faith, to keep that hope, to take those steps, knowing that it's okay to not know exactly how this is going to play out, but to also know that the benefits are probably going to far outweigh any negative that is going to come. We don't have to have all the answers before we step into that promised land either. So some of you are like the over planners, the over preparers, where you're like, everything has to be thought out, then planned out, then everything has to be packed and ready to go. Like every provision, you have like the backpack that's like the life pack, and everything's in it because you're Mary Poppins and you just never know what's going to happen, and everything has to be completely 100% in place before you take those steps. Stop doing that to yourself. Okay, stop having that perfectionism, that everything has to be perfect before you do anything mindset. It will always hold you back and keep you from doing the things that you deserve, from living the life that you deserve, from living fully in your potential and your purpose. We also don't have to know what comes next. We can just know that we are headed in that right direction. We're stepping into that promised land. We're stepping into that destined space, and we'll figure the rest out. Or the rest will become apparent. As we walk down the path, things become more clear in the landscape. So then we get past the trees or the scrub brush and all the things that are like obstructing our view. And now we can see more, but we couldn't see that until we started walking farther down the path into this new environment. So where things become more clear. And then we see other paths. And then we realize, oh my gosh, the fork in the road was right here. And then we have to figure it out. And those are good problems to have. And you wouldn't have those problems if you were still stuck in your own self-imposed prison, setting up camp on the path itself instead of walking into the actual place that you were destined to live. So during the next week, I want you to think about that wilderness that you have been wandering around in your life. What is keeping you from taking those steps and believing that they will lead you in the right direction? That they are already leading you down the path for those goals and those end outcomes that you've already said that you want, that you've made it very clear by spending the time. This is what I want, this is what I'm after, and this is what I have to do to get it. What is keeping you from that? I want you to really think about it. And then in the next episode, we'll go deeper underneath the surface of this slave to the old way in life mindset that get us stuck in this Exodus journey. so that we can take those initial steps into that promised land and then look around and assess, where am I going to set up camp? Am I going to keep walking? Is there a fork in the road? What am I going to do with that fork? So that we have a lot of really great problems or really great decisions to make now that we've entered into that promised land. So that next time we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about being right on the fringes, on the inside of this new environment. So what are you going to do now that you're on the inside of this environment in order to begin to inhabiting this space that has already been promised to you? Well, girl, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, don't forget to follow my channel and share it with girlfriends who also want to restore their self-worth and confidence. Also, if this podcast inspired you, consider leaving a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. And as you go through your day, may your empowered spirit, heart, and mind guide you. Catch new episodes every Friday. Ciao.